Okay, so give us a sense first of what's the sentiment like in the lower house regarding this SWF. Is there now pressure among your fellow legislators to pass the measure, given that the Speaker Romualdez himself filed the bill?
Yes, because the Speaker filed it, many of the majority members want to fast track it. I think that's one of the issues. We should really take our time because it's such it's major legislation. It's a big amount. Second, there are many provisions that need to be discussed openly in the public and in the committee.
Okay, sir, let's backtrack a bit. What is the rationale exactly for filing this bill at this moment? Are not Landbank, GSIS, SSS already, maybe in a more indirect or passive way, investing our taxpayer money in low-risk instruments, and there's already regulation surrounding this, I assume? Why do we need to change anything and create a completely new fund at this point in time?
Correct. I agree with you. That's one of the issues that need to be addressed. Why do we need it? And why do we need it now when GSIS and SSS are already investing these funds? Now, I assume for diversification purposes, that might be a good reason, but it's another layer of bureaucracy, creating a fund in another GOCC. That's the way it's written. We need more safeguards if it's really pushed. That's another concern. So there are many issues. So my request is we should take our time. This should not be something they're pushing to pass by next week. And that's too fast. And it's too soon.
Okay. And sir, assuming this does get approved, where do you think you would feel comfortable that this fund would invest in, that, as you mentioned, is different from what's already been doing now? If we look at pension funds all over the world, particularly in Europe, these have very strict rules on where they can put their money, low risk, long-term investments, passive funds, diba? You want the money to be there when you retire. And a lot are even with ESG rules at the moment, diba? They can't invest in tobacco over in Norway. So where exactly can we have this amount of firms to put this money of the taxpayers in?
The way the proposed bill is written, it can invest in anywhere. Okay? So that's a concern. But I think even before that, what's important is the underlying proposal on who will be managing and overseeing that. So the details, it can be stock market, it can be stocks, bonds, real estate, corporations locally and internationally. It's very wide in the proposed bill. But the issue there is, for example, one, the president is chairman of the board of directors. With 15 board directors, there's only 2 independent. So that needs to be discussed. Why only 2? I think it should be majority to avoid any concerns on politicization of the fund. In fact, in the political setting of the Philippines, I think we will be better served if the president, ang dami ng problema ng presidente. The president doesn't manage day-to-day GSIS, Landbank, or SSS, for example, or BSP. So if we were to do this, and those questions are asked, why should the president be the chairman of the board? In fact, that should probably be an independent person, not appointed by the president. The way it's written now, all the board members are appointed by the president. That should not be the case.
Okay, given that as well, I mean, you've discussed one of the more salient points here about the Maharlika Investment Fund. You have the board composition, but this time also, one sticking point would have to be the source of funding, something that we have been talking about earlier. But, the proponents are saying that there's going to be zero exposure here for pensioners and that it's going to be a separate funding. But how certain are you of that? And at the same time, how risky, considering that state funds themselves are not even the most stable to begin with? I mean, could Could this possibly result as well in increase in premiums?
Just that's misleading. The way they want to structure it is the funds from GSIS and SSS will have sovereign guarantees, the way I understand it. So meaning risk-free. But the fund itself can lose money. At the end of the day, it will be the taxpayers who will pay for that. So it's not risk-free. It may be risk-free for SSS, but not for all of us. Second, another big issue there is the source of funding for the Maharlika, as you know, is the SSS GSIS. What we're not talking about, and what the media should point out, is embedded in the proposed bill, the annual national budget is required to fund the Maharlika, meaning the national budget, that we pass every year in Congress. I'm very, very against that. We're already borrowing to fund the national budget. So essentially, we would be borrowing to fund the Maharlika.
Right.
And to me, that is bad financial management.
It's like just transferring funds at the same time. Does this also mean that at least is there anywhere in the charter of the SSS and the GSIS that pensioners, members would actually have a platform to actually voice out their opposition, at least when it comes to transferring the funding here from GSIS and SSSS to MWF?
They do. Of course, all the members have the right to speak out on that. And because you mentioned that, in the proposed bill for Maharlika, I don't remember seeing any representation for members.
Sir, finally, how likely is this bill to be passed? And if so, I mean, are you pushing to scrap it altogether, or are you pushing to have some revisions?
I'm personally pushing to improve certain provisions. I want to be constructive. I don't want to be obstructionist. In many countries, sovereign wealth funds have worked. But in the Philippines, that we need to put a lot more time and effort into fine-tuning the proposed bill. And at the end of the day, at least in Congress, I don't know in the Senate, my best guess is it will pass because it's sponsored by the Speaker. And as you know, majority rules, and the Speaker presides over the House, and the majority will follow him.
Now also, regarding checks and balances here, you have the bill also somehow at least seeking exclusion rather from the Governance Commission on GOCCs. Your thoughts on that?
That's another contentious one. The resource persons wanted an exemption. That needs to be discussed more. I'm 50-50 on that. Why do we need to do that? For example, what will prevent in the future directors and officers of that fund managing it, them paying themselves excessive bonuses and compensation? That was one of the issues before, if you recall, with the GOCCs. That's why we created the GCG.
Sir, what's the timing of the discussions here? Is this going to be presented? When are you going to be debating on this and adding these revisions?
There were two hearings last week with the Committee on Banks and Financial Institutions. I saw on our calendar this morning that there will be another briefing by the GSIS this afternoon. So I think what had happened, because of the media coverage and the public reaction, the House leadership decided to put more time into it, which is good. I don't think it was initially planned to have a briefing. So I think now, the House leadership is getting the sense of the public, and it seems like they may not fast-track it as much as they were trying to last week.